Lyra Kane sat quietly in the observation deck of the shuttle, staring at the glowing blue and green sphere below. Earth. The instructors had called it uninhabitable, dangerous beyond measure, and even impossible for humans to survive. But here it was, real and breathtaking beneath her. She could see massive forests stretching like waves of green, rivers sparkling like silver threads, and mountains that seemed to pierce the clouds. Around her, the other cadets fidgeted nervously. Many had grown up hearing the same warnings. No human had ever survived here, and any attempt was considered foolish at best. Lyra felt their fear, but it didn't touch her own resolve. She had trained for this her entire life, not just physically, but mentally. She knew humans had a way of surviving where others failed, a stubborn spark that no alien instructor could understand. The shuttle shuddered as it began its descent through Earth's atmosphere. The cabin lights flickered. Outside, thick clouds swirled violently, buffeted by winds that no human-made machine could fully withstand. Some cadets gasped, gripping their seats. Lyra leaned forward, her eyes bright with focus. "We are descending into the Northern Highlands," the shuttle's AI announced. "Coordinates set for initial survival trials. Estimated survival rate for human cadets, 0%. Lyra's lips curled in a small smile. 0%, she whispered to herself. "We'll see about that." The shuttle landed with a jolt that sent a few cadets tumbling into one another. The doors opened to a roaring wind that carried the smell of rain and earth. Lyra took her first step onto the soil of Earth. It was firm, cool, and strangely alive under her boots. Around her, the other cadets hesitated, some frozen in fear. An alien instructor, tall and angular, with skin that shimmered like molten metal, approached. "Cadets," it said in a voice that echoed unnaturally, "your mission is simple. Survive. This planet will test every one of your limits. Many have tried. All have failed. Human endurance is limited. Do not hope to succeed." Lyra's gaze met the instructor's cold eyes. She could feel the challenge in that statement, the unspoken disbelief that humans could withstand Earth. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with determination. When the first challenge came, it was immediate. Torrential rain fell without warning, the wind bending trees until they groaned. Lightning streaked across the sky, and the ground became slippery mud. Some cadets screamed and fell. Lyra's boots sank deep into the soil, but she kept her balance. She thought quickly, scanning the area. Fallen branches and rocks were scattered across the field. Using her training, she built a small shelter from the branches and mud, just enough to shield herself from the worst of the storm. By the time the rain slowed, many cadets were exhausted, shivering, and defeated. Lyra, damp but determined, stood tall inside her makeshift shelter. She had survived her first hour on Earth. A small, proud smile touched her lips. As the cadets regrouped, the alien instructors watched silently. Whispers of disbelief passed among them. One instructor muttered, "She adapts. This is unexpected." Lyra didn't hear them. Her attention was drawn to the horizon, where mountains rose like jagged teeth. Somewhere among them, she knew, lay the next trial. She felt no fear, only anticipation. Survival was not about brute strength, it was about observation, creativity, and courage. Qualities humans had in abundance. Over the next few hours, the cadets were given a simple task: navigate a forest maze filled with Earth's native creatures, some of which were dangerous, others simply strange. The path was treacherous, with tangled vines, sudden drop-offs, and thick undergrowth that seemed determined to trap them. Many cadets panicked. One young man tripped over a root and twisted his ankle. Another ran headlong into a thorn bush. Lyra moved carefully, observing the environment. She noticed subtle signs: Broken branches indicated safe paths. Animal tracks warned of predators, and small pools of water promised refreshment. By nightfall, only a handful of cadets had reached the clearing where the instructors awaited. Lyra was among them, exhausted but alert. Her clothing was torn, mud caked her boots, and her hair was plastered to her face, but she was alive. She had adapted, thought fast, and survived. One of the alien instructors approached, its metallic form glinting in the moonlight. "Remarkable," it said slowly. "Few survive even 1 hour. You, human, display skills we did not anticipate." Lyra lifted her chin, meeting the instructor's gaze. "I didn't come here to fail," she said simply. A few cadets looked at her with awe, others with envy. But Lyra didn't care about their opinions. This was about more than personal glory. It was about proving that humans could survive where others thought it impossible. That night, the cadets set up a small camp. Lyra took the first watch, scanning the darkened forest for signs of movement. Strange noises echoed through the trees, growls, rustling leaves, the distant cries of creatures she had never seen before. Yet none of it frightened her. Humans were not just strong, they were resourceful, adaptive, and determined. As she watched the stars above, Lyra thought of Earth's harshness not as a threat, but as a challenge. Every obstacle was a lesson. Every danger, an opportunity to prove what humans could endure. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a quiet excitement. The instructors had said no human could survive Earth. She intended to prove them wrong. By dawn, the forest seemed less threatening, more like a puzzle to be solved. Lyra had already begun marking safe paths and noting sources of food and water. She shared her findings with a few cadets who were too timid to explore alone. Slowly, a small group began to look to her for guidance, drawn to her courage and insight. As the sun rose over Earth's rugged terrain, the alien instructors observed from afar. Some whispered to each other, unsure if they had misjudged humans entirely. Lyra, muddy and tired, stood at the edge of the clearing, looking at the mountains beyond. She raised her head and breathed deeply. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. And with that, Lyra Kane, the cadet who refused to believe in limits, took her first steps toward proving that humans could thrive even on a world no one thought they could survive. The morning sun burned through the mist that hung over the northern highlands. Lyra Kane adjusted her pack and glanced around at the other cadets. Some were still trembling from the previous night, their confidence shaken by Earth's harsh welcome. Others looked determined, though their eyes betrayed fear. Lyra felt a small surge of pride. She was not just surviving, she was learning, observing, and adapting. That was the human way. The alien instructors assembled the cadets in a wide clearing. The tallest among them, the metallic shimmered figure, spoke first. "Today begins the trial of elements. You will face Earth at its most extreme. Storms, heat, cold, terrain. Your goal is to survive and reach the designated waypoint. Few will succeed. Human cadets, do not overestimate your capabilities." Lyra met the instructor's gaze with steady eyes. "Then I will show you," she thought silently, "that humans can endure what you cannot imagine." The cadets were released into the wilderness, each carrying only a basic survival kit. The first challenge hit immediately. A violent windstorm tore across the plains, throwing dust and small stones at anyone who tried to stand. Trees bent dangerously, and lightning streaked across the sky. Many cadets stumbled or ran in panic. Lyra dropped low to the ground, pressing herself against a rock formation and covering her head with her arms. She watched patterns in the wind, noticing moments when the gusts lessened, creating small windows of movement. Timing her steps carefully, she moved from rock to rock, slowly advancing while others struggled blindly. By mid-morning, the windstorm passed, leaving a scorching sun in its place. Temperatures rose quickly, and the terrain became dry and cracked. Lyra searched for water, remembering the small streams and dew pools she had observed the night before. She shared a hidden puddle with a cadet who had collapsed from heat exhaustion, earning a grateful nod. Lyra realized that survival wasn't just about herself, it was about helping others when possible, creating bonds that could last in these harsh conditions. The next trial came in the form of a sudden earthquake. The ground shook violently, splitting open fissures and sending rocks tumbling down hillsides. Many cadets froze, terrified of the unpredictability. Lyra, however, had learned to read Earth's terrain. She spotted the safe spots where the ground remained steady and led a few hesitant cadets across, holding their hands to steady them as they jumped over small crevices. "You see?" she thought. "Humans do not give up. Humans observe, adapt, and act. That is why we survive. Cheap case do. When we survive our cheap case do." By afternoon, the challenges grew even stranger. The cadets entered a dense forest, its thick canopy blocking sunlight. The forest was alive with sounds, chirps, growls, and rustling that hinted at unseen predators. Lyra noticed the creatures avoided certain plants, and she realized these plants could serve as a warning system. Moving carefully, she guided a small group through the forest, avoiding dangerous encounters and teaching them to watch and listen, to respect the environment rather than fight it blindly. The alien instructors watched from a distance, their whispers filled with curiosity. "She anticipates every challenge," one said. "She adapts. No other human has shown this." Lyra paused at a stream to drink. The water was cold and clear, and she noticed small fish swimming near the edges. Suddenly, a shadow flickered across the water. A large creature, unlike anything she had seen. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it moved with grace. Some cadets panicked, but Lyra remained calm. She understood that fear often led to mistakes. Slowly, she backed away, using natural cover to avoid attracting the creature's attention. The others followed her, silently, learning from her composure. Evening came, bringing freezing temperatures. The air was sharp and cold, biting at the cadet's exposed skin. Lyra quickly gathered branches and leaves, building a shelter that could withstand the night chill. She used her knowledge of insulation, layering leaves and mud to retain warmth. Others huddled near her, some too exhausted to do more than follow her instructions. By the time night fell, the small camp was secure. Sitting by a small fire, Lyra thought about the day's trials. Each challenge had tested not only physical strength, but mental sharpness. She realized that humans thrived on challenges that required creativity and quick thinking qualities that many aliens underestimated. While others had relied on brute force or blind obedience, she had relied on observation, intuition, and cooperation. A few cadets approached her quietly. "How do you stay so calm?" one asked. Lyra smiled softly. "I don't see fear as the enemy. I see it as a signal. It tells you to pay attention, to think, and to act carefully. Humans survive because we learn from fear instead of letting it control us." The night was long and silent, broken only by the distant cries of creatures that prowled the forest. Lyra kept watch in shifts, guiding her small group and ensuring that everyone stayed safe. Even in the darkness, she noticed patterns the way animals moved, the shifting winds, the soft vibrations of distant rivers. All these observations helped her anticipate what was coming next. By dawn, the trial of elements had changed Earth once again. A new storm was approaching, clouds gathering ominously on the horizon. Many cadets were exhausted, bruised, and doubting themselves. Lyra, however, felt a quiet excitement. Each challenge had been a puzzle, and she had solved it. Humans were not meant to survive by luck. They survived by thinking, by trying, by refusing to give up. The alien instructors gathered at the edge of the plains, their forms gleaming in the morning light. "Remarkable," one said. "This human survives every test. Observe her methods. Perhaps we have underestimated this species." Lyra caught a few words, but she ignored them. Survival was not about recognition. It was about proving to herself and to anyone who doubted that humans could thrive where others failed. She looked at her fellow cadets. Some were bruised and battered, but their eyes reflected something new. Hope, leadership, courage, and adaptability. These were qualities that humans carried naturally. Lyra knew that if they could follow her example, they had a chance. The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of rain and earth. Lyra tightened her pack, checked her supplies, and led the cadets forward. The trial of elements was far from over, but she felt ready. Each step was a statement. Humans were not weak, humans were not helpless, and humans would survive even on a world the instructors had deemed impossible. As the group disappeared into the forests and hills, Lyra felt a surge of determination. She would not just survive, she would thrive. She would show the instructors, and the universe, that humans were capable of more than anyone imagined. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet voice whispered, "This is only the beginning." The forest had grown darker, thicker, and stranger as the cadets moved deeper into Earth's wilderness. Lyra Kane led the small group carefully, scanning every movement, listening to every sound. The trees twisted unnaturally, their roots forming barriers and pathways like the walls of a living maze. Birds with glowing feathers called from the canopy, and creatures rustled in the underbrush, watching but not revealing themselves. Lyra had learned quickly that patience was as important as strength. Every step, every decision, mattered. One wrong move could trigger a dangerous encounter, and the forest seemed designed to test their awareness. She paused beside a stream, crouching to drink water. The reflection on the surface caught her attention, not the usual reflection of trees, but something far larger moving silently behind the water's edge. "Stay close," she whispered to the cadets, her voice calm but firm. The creature emerged slowly, revealing a massive, muscular body covered in scales that shimmered like polished stone. Its eyes glowed faintly, intelligent and curious. Lyra froze, understanding immediately that this was no ordinary animal. It was intelligent, aware, and capable of studying them as much as they studied it. The cadets around her panicked. One stepped back, tripping over a root. Another let out a terrified cry. Lyra raised a hand. "Quiet," she said softly. "Observe. Don't attack." The creature tilted its head, eyeing them with curiosity rather than hostility. Lyra noted its behavior. Careful, measured movements, cautious distance, and an evident awareness of the group's intentions. This was not a mindless predator, it was a thinker, a being that could assess situations and respond. "Everyone stay calm," Lyra instructed. She slowly lowered herself to the ground, demonstrating non-threatening behavior. She spoke softly, not to communicate words, but to show intent. Her voice was calm, steady, and controlled. The creature seemed to sense this. It shifted closer, still keeping distance, but showing no aggression. Lyra realized something remarkable. Humans had a natural ability to connect through empathy, through observation of behavior rather than force. She slowly extended her hand, palm visible, a universal sign of peace. The creature studied her carefully, sniffing the air. Then, almost imperceptibly, it lowered its head slightly. A few cadets whispered in awe, watching as Lyra's calm courage worked in a way no weapon or tool could. They began to understand that Earth's challenges were not always about physical survival. They were about understanding, intuition, and respect for life. The creature suddenly emitted a low, vibrating sound. Lyra listened closely and noticed a pattern, almost like a rhythm in a language. She mimicked the vibrations with soft taps on the nearby rock. The creature paused, then repeated the pattern. A silent dialogue began small, careful, yet filled with mutual recognition. Hours passed in this strange communication. Lyra learned the creature's movements, its warnings, and even its ways of finding water and food. She noted how it avoided certain areas of the forest, areas that seemed dangerous even to her trained eyes. By watching the creature, Lyra understood more about Earth in one afternoon than she could have in days of aimless exploration. The alien instructors observed from a distance, invisible to the cadets. Their metallic forms shimmered in the fading sunlight. Whispers passed among them, tinged with disbelief. "She is not merely surviving," one said. "She is thriving, learning, adapting." Lyra realized that Earth itself was a teacher. Every obstacle, every strange creature, every hidden danger was a lesson. Humans had an advantage the aliens could not fully grasp: the ability to learn from the environment and from life around them, to see threats as puzzles rather than insurmountable walls. As night approached, the forest grew colder and darker. The creature retreated to a nearby glade, signaling that the cadets were safe if they respected its territory. Lyra led her group to a sheltered area, using what she had learned from observing the creature to avoid dangers like unstable ground and hidden pits. She set up a small camp and instructed the cadets on careful watch shifts. That night, as she sat by the small fire, Lyra reflected on the encounter. She realized that survival was not just a test of strength or stamina, it was a test of understanding. The creatures of Earth, the unpredictable storms, the terrain itself, they were all part of a living system. Humans thrived when they respected that system, when they observed and adapted rather than tried to dominate. A cadet named Joran, still shaken from the encounter, approached her quietly. How did you know it wouldn't attack?" he asked. Lyra smiled softly. "I didn't know," she admitted. "I guessed. But humans have something special. We learn quickly, we notice patterns, and we don't give up. We survive because we think, not just because we fight." Joran nodded slowly, a spark of understanding in his eyes. Other cadets listened in silence, learning from Lyra's words more than any instructor could teach. The next day, the group continued their journey. The forest opened into a vast plain, strange formations of rocks rising like towers from the ground. The wind swept across the landscape, carrying scents they could not identify. Lyra scanned the horizon, her mind alert for any sign of danger. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. The cadets froze, fear gripping them. From the horizon, enormous shapes moved slowly, but with unmistakable purpose. Lyra's heart raced with excitement and caution. She knew this was the moment they had been unknowingly preparing for. First contact with Earth's greatest creatures, the Titans. Massive, intelligent, and aware, the Titans emerged. Their skin shimmered with reflective patterns, and their eyes held a depth of intelligence that seemed almost human. Most cadets panicked, fleeing instinctively. Lyra stood her ground, understanding that fear could not guide them now. She signaled for the group to stay calm, to observe, rather than react. The Titans stopped at a distance, watching. Lyra slowly moved forward, showing no signs of aggression. She crouched slightly, arms visible, her body language open and non-threatening. The Titans tilted their heads, their movements slow and deliberate. For a long moment, nothing happened except the sound of wind and the distant cries of smaller creatures. Then, one Titan stepped closer, sniffing the air, testing her intent. Lyra held her breath, every sense alert. She mirrored its slow movements, demonstrating patience and understanding. Gradually, a bridge of trust was formed. The Titans did not attack. Instead, they acknowledged the human's presence. Lyra realized that human ingenuity was not just about tools or weapons, it was about communication, empathy, and courage in the face of the unknown. By evening, the cadets set camp near the Titans, using the knowledge they had gained to avoid danger. Lyra had turned a terrifying encounter into a lesson in respect and survival. She had shown that humans could understand the world around them in ways no one, not even the alien instructors, had expected. As the sun set, painting the sky with brilliant reds and golds, Lyra looked at the Titans, silently observing from the distance. She knew that today was more than survival, it was proof. Proof that humans had a unique spark. A combination of courage, creativity, and adaptability that could thrive even on a planet no one else thought possible. And deep inside, Lyra felt the quiet certainty that the greatest challenges were yet to come, but that humans were ready. The shattered plains stretched before Lyra Kane like a broken ocean of rock and dust. Jagged cliffs jutted out at impossible angles. Deep fissures cut the ground open, and violent winds howled through narrow canyons. The alien instructors had chosen this place for the final trial because no human, or any cadet, for that matter, had ever survived it. Lyra's pack was light, her tools basic. Yet she felt ready. Every challenge she had faced on Earth, storms, earthquakes, predators, strange terrain had prepared her for this. She glanced at her fellow cadets, some pale with fear, others tense with determination. Many had already fallen behind, exhausted by earlier trials. "Stay close," she instructed firmly. "Watch me. Learn from what I do. Step carefully. Think carefully." The first obstacle was a narrow bridge of cracked rock spanning a deep chasm. Below, gusts of wind whipped dust and small stones upward, threatening to knock anyone off balance. Some cadets froze, staring at the gap in terror. Lyra stepped forward without hesitation, testing the stone with her foot before moving. She measured every step, her body steady, her mind focused. Slowly, the others followed, trusting her guidance. Once across, the plains opened into a vast expanse of sharp stones and uneven ground. Each step threatened a sprained ankle or a dangerous fall. Lyra scanned the terrain, noticing small paths worn into the rock trails used perhaps by Earth's native creatures. She led the cadets along these safer routes, teaching them to move quietly, observe carefully, and anticipate hidden dangers. Midway through the day, a sudden storm swept across the plains. Sheets of rain fell horizontally, striking with a force strong enough to knock cadets off their feet. Lyra pressed her back against a boulder, using it as a shield, and pulled the nearest cadet behind her. She quickly fashioned a temporary cover with a few pieces of debris, showing the group how to use the environment to survive. "This is not about strength," she shouted over the wind. "It's about thinking, observing, adapting. Humans survive because we never give up." The cadets, inspired by her courage, followed her example. One by one, they learned to read the storm, moving when the gusts paused and finding shelter when the wind returned. By evening, the storm passed, leaving behind a world transformed, slick rocks, deep puddles, and fallen debris. Lyra's eyes, however, were sharp. She knew the next challenge awaited. The shifting terrain of the central canyon. The canyon was a twisting maze of rocks and sudden drops. Tremors from deep beneath the plains caused unstable cliffs to crumble without warning. Lyra paused at the edge, her mind calculating the safest route. She noticed patterns. Small cracks that indicated weak edges, areas where vegetation held the rock steady, and shadows that revealed dips and crevices. Using these observations, she guided the group carefully. At one point, a cadet slipped on a wet stone. Lyra lunged forward, grabbing the cadet's hand just in time. "Focus! Watch your step!" she shouted, steadying the young cadet. Humans survive by paying attention to every detail, by helping each other, by staying calm when danger strikes. Hours passed, and the sun dipped low on the horizon. Exhaustion weighed heavily on the cadets, but Lyra's energy never faltered. She had learned to conserve strength to move efficiently, and to anticipate the plane's unpredictable changes. Her leadership became a lifeline for the others, guiding them where fear and doubt might have led them astray. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. The wind cut through even the thickest clothing, and shadows from jagged rocks created illusions of predators in the darkness. Lyra quickly built a shelter using the stones and branches she had collected, insulating it with layers of leaves and mud. She instructed the cadets to keep close, to stay quiet, and to maintain watch. During her shift, she observed the planes carefully. The tremors continued, the winds shifted, and strange noises echoed from deep within the canyon. Yet Lyra did not panic. Every movement, every sound, was information. She mapped the patterns in her mind, preparing for the journey at dawn. Humans, she knew, survived by learning from their environment and turning knowledge into action. Morning brought a new challenge. A wide ravine, nearly impassable without climbing. The sides were slick, crumbling under pressure, and loose stones fell into the abyss below. Lyra examined the cliff, identifying handholds and footholds that would support their weight. Step by step, she climbed, testing each surface before committing her full weight. She lowered ropes to help the others, guiding them carefully and encouraging each cadet with steady words. By midday, the cadets reached the far side of the ravine, battered but alive. Lyra looked back at the path they had traveled, the broken rocks, the stormed plains, the twisting canyon. Every obstacle had tested them, and yet they had survived. Humans were not the strongest species, she knew, but they were the most resourceful, the most adaptable. Where others saw danger, humans saw opportunity to learn, to grow, to survive. The final trial awaited them at the center of the shattered plains, a plateau surrounded by cliffs where fierce winds and tremors combined to create a nearly impossible environment. Lyra studied it carefully, noting safe paths, areas of stable ground, and signs of hidden dangers. She led the cadets in small groups, timing each movement to avoid falling debris and sudden gusts. At the plateau's edge, a massive boulder shifted suddenly, threatening to crush one of the cadets. Lyra reacted instantly, pushing the cadet out of harm's way and signaling the others to take cover. She realized that survival was not just about facing natural challenges, it was about protecting others, about leadership under pressure. Humans survived because they cared for each other as much as for themselves. By evening, they reached the center of the plateau. Exhausted, mud-streaked, and battered, the cadets looked at each other in disbelief. They had survived the shattered plains. Lyra, standing at the edge and looking out over the broken landscape, felt a deep sense of pride, not just in herself, but in the group she had guided. Humans were more than survivors, they were thinkers, innovators, and leaders. The alien instructors appeared at the plateau's edge, their metallic forms gleaming in the fading sunlight. "Remarkable," one said slowly. "No human has ever endured this trial. You have not only survived, you have thrived. Observe her methods: adaptation, leadership, courage. This species is extraordinary." Well, Lyra looked at them steadily. She did not need their approval. She had proven, through action, that humans could survive where others failed. But she allowed herself a small smile, knowing that recognition from the instructors meant the universe might finally begin to see humans as capable, as strong, as extraordinary. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the shattered plains, Lyra turned to the other cadets. "This is what humans do," she said softly. "We survive, we adapt, we learn, and we never give up. Remember that." The cadets nodded, some with tears in their eyes, some with awe, all with renewed determination. They had faced the impossible, and humans had prevailed. Lyra Kane raised her hand slightly, almost unconsciously, feeling the weight of every challenge overcome. Tomorrow, they would face the final evaluation, and she knew, without a doubt, that humans had proven themselves beyond question. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "The universe will remember this day." The dawn, over the shattered plains, painted the horizon with shades of orange and gold. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of wet earth and stone. Lyra Kane stood at the edge of the plateau, looking over the terrain she and her fellow cadets had conquered. Every scar in the land, every twisted rock, every trembling cliff, was a testament to the trials they had survived. Around her, the cadets gathered silently. Yet there was a spark in their eyes, a fire that only those who had faced the impossible could possess. They had followed Lyra through storms, earthquakes, unpredictable creatures, and treacherous terrain. They had survived where failure seemed inevitable. The alien instructors approached, their metallic forms gleaming in the early sunlight. Their faces, or what passed for faces, were expressionless, but their movements were tense. The longest-standing instructor, whose voice had carried judgment and doubt since their arrival, stepped forward. "You have completed the trials," it said slowly. "No cadet, human or otherwise, has ever survived this final challenge. Your actions, human, defy expectation. You have proven resilience beyond what was thought possible." Lyra's heart thumped, but she held her head high. She glanced at the other cadets. Some were looking at her with awe, others with gratitude. This moment was bigger than any single person. It was proof of humanity's ingenuity, courage, and perseverance. Stepping forward, Lyra raised her hand, steady and unwavering. Her voice carried clearly over the wind-swept plateau. "Then, how am I standing here?" The words hung in the air, resonating through the rocks and canyons. The instructors exchanged glances, some shocked, some thoughtful. No amount of calculation, no logic, had predicted this outcome. Humans, fragile, seemingly limited creatures, had not just survived, they had adapted, learned, and led. Lyra looked at the instructors without fear. "You said no human could survive Earth," she continued, her voice firm. "But here I am. And not just me, I led others. Together, we faced every danger, every test, every impossible challenge. We adapted, we learned, we survived. And that is what humans do." A murmur ran through the cadets. Some stepped forward, voices shaking but full of conviction. "We followed her," one said, "and we survived because she showed us the way." "Humans never give up," Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of their words. Humanity's strength was not just in her, but in every person who chose courage over fear, observation over recklessness, and action over surrender. Every human had the spark to face the impossible, and she had proven it. The alien instructors finally spoke as a group. "We underestimated your species," one admitted, voice low and measured. "We observed strength, adaptation, and intelligence beyond our expectations. Humans possess qualities we cannot fully predict or control." Another added, "You have proven that determination, ingenuity, and cooperation are strengths that rival any tool or weapon. Earth itself has tested you, and yet you endure. Remarkable." Lyra listened, but her focus was not on their praise. It was on the truth that she and her fellow cadets had lived. Humans survived by thinking, observing, and adapting. Humans survived by refusing to give in to fear or hopelessness. That was the lesson she wanted to carry forward. The cadets began to gather their belongings, but Lyra stayed a moment longer, looking at the rugged land that had tested them in every way. She thought of the creatures she had observed, the titans, the intelligent predators, and the small animals that had guided subtle lessons. She thought of the storms, the earthquakes, the treacherous cliffs. Each had been a teacher, a challenge, and a proving ground. She turned to the cadets one last time. "Remember this," she said. Every challenge is an opportunity. Every danger is a lesson. Humans survive because we do not give up, and we do not face the world alone. We learn. We adapt. We help each other. That is why we endure. As the group began their descent back toward the landing zone, the alien instructors followed silently, observing every movement, every decision. Their doubts had been replaced with a new understanding. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability was a strength. Humans could think in ways the instructors could not anticipate. Humans could endure in ways no one had imagined. On the final path, a cadet stumbled over a loose stone. Lyra caught them before they fell, steadying them with a firm hand. "Stay alert," she said, her tone gentle but commanding. "We are not finished yet. But look at how far we have come. Look at what we have survived." 7. The cadet nodded, a small smile breaking through exhaustion. Around them, the other cadets followed, drawing confidence from Lyra's presence. Even in the face of exhaustion, fear, and the unknown, they had learned to trust themselves and humanity. Finally, they reached the landing area. The shuttle waited, engines humming softly in the cool morning air. Lyra paused at the threshold, taking one last look at the shattered plains. This planet, which had been considered impossible for humans to survive, had become their proving ground. It had tested their limits and shown that human courage, intelligence, and resilience were unmatched. The instructors approached Lyra once more. "You have changed our understanding of your species," the tallest said. "Humans are extraordinary, perhaps even indispensable in the wider universe." Lyra simply nodded. She did not need their praise. The true recognition came from knowing she had proven what humans were capable of. Strength was not always physical. Survival was not just about endurance. Leadership, observation, adaptability, courage, and cooperation. These were the qualities that had carried them through. As the shuttle lifted off, Lyra gazed down at the shattered plains. The sun reflected off the rocks, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch forever. She felt a quiet sense of triumph. Not arrogance, but certainty. Humans had survived where no one thought possible. Humans had adapted, learned, and conquered challenges that would have broken any other species. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Earth had been a trial, but the universe was vast. Other worlds awaited, filled with unknown dangers, strange creatures, and impossible challenges. And Lyra Kane, standing tall among her fellow humans, was ready. She had proven a simple truth. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, fastest, or most powerful, but because they refused to give up. Because they observed, adapted, and cared for one another. Because they dared to rise when others fell. As the shuttle soared into the sky, Lyra raised her hand slightly, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Her voice echoed in her mind, strong and steady. Then, "How am I standing here?" And for the first time, she knew the universe would never underestimate humanity again.